Most people will have heard of The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, leading Victorian naturalist who had this theory about how animals morphed into slightly different versions of animals where they happen to be living for reasons of the natural selection. At the same time, there was an equally important naturalist, which is Alfred Russel Wallace. And luckily, in his latter life, he moved to Grays. Now, some of us consider him to be far superior to Darwin on the grounds that he developed his theory in the Far East, as opposed to Darwin, who was, I think, mostly in South America. But he produced his notes and sent them to Darwin and said, "Here, Darwin, what do you think of this theory?" And Darwin had a momentary upset by this, because he reckoned, Darwin, that he worked it out 25 years ahead, but he'd not told anyone and he hadn't published it. So Wallace and Darwin got together in London and they delivered their scientific findings to the Linnean Society, which is the leading society for natural history. He then stopped, this is Wallace, he stopped his gallivanting around the world and decided to settle. And he picked Grays because it had very good railway links for him, and he was hoping to run a museum. They were thinking of starting a natural history museum. Now, we all know that's in South Kensington, but Wallace didn't think that. He'd been told that they were going to build it in a quiet little town called Barking. And so he thought, I'll get in there quick and I'll buy a house or build a house close by on the railway line, and I can then go for that job and it'll suit me fine. I want a bit of land, I want to grow a few plants. He was very interested in plants as well as animals. And he bought this, I think it was about 8 acres outside Grays in those days, and the house now is known as the Dell. Prince Albert decided that the Natural History Museum ought to be in South Kensington with all the other museums that he was kicking off, and so someone else was appointed to run the Natural History Museum. An interesting sideline to that is that Wallace's extensive collections that he sent home, butterflies, moths, bugs and beetles and all sorts, are now sitting, for the most part, in the basement of the Natural History Museum, hidden from gaze because no one can, there's too many to show people. But they've got them there, and they've also got his diaries and things. One diary they've got is of him living in Grays and how he planted his garden and what the weather was like and such like, and when he heard the first cuckoo. And this is all fascinating stuff. So this actual archive is in what is now the Natural History Museum in South Kensington.